This one's for John. Couldn't God have built antiquity into creation? So I might get you fellas to just hold your mics. And I'll ask the question from here. If you'd like to stand up when you're addressing from your seats, that will be the best way. Unless you want to use your balcony.
Okay, I'm not sure what your definition of antiquity is, but if you mean age, then you face the same problem that has plagued philosophers. If God made the world to be old when it wasn't, he has deceived you. And since the God of the Bible doesn't let you tell a lie, and he says he doesn't tell a lie, then no, he's not going to do that. Here's the problem that really faces you. You look at the earth and you say, today it's taking this long for that much rock to turn into soil. So if the world had enough soil to grow Adam's trees, then it must have already been old, or it appeared to be old. No, Adam knew it wasn't old because God told him. Right? Question, did you believe it or not? So you live in a world today where the soil takes a long time to form, and if you assume that's always been the principle, you would say antiquity was built in. But in reality, it was brand new soil, and soil, by the way, actually can be created quite quickly, given the right process, not time.
Okay, would you like to stand up?
Yeah. Soil takes a very long time to make. Basically, in order to make soil, you need to start with hydrogen and run it through a few supernovas. So it actually takes a while, and then, of course, the materials from the supernovas have to coalesce around a star and have to turn into a planet and end up on a planet which is developing and have life on it, because soil is basically a part of the biological process. I mean, that really gets to the key of the question. Like, it takes a very long time to generate anything in our world, because the elements, the very elements that we are made of, have to be generated, have to be forged inside supernovas. And they take billions of years to generate that kind of material. Thank you.
Okay, Peter. From what I understand of evolution, it requires lots of small changes where information is added to the code of a species. Do you have any evidence where the information in a creature's DNA has increased from outside influence? Without outside influence, resulting in an increase in information?
I mean, this happens all the time. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not the case that increased information or increased length of the genome results in a more complicated creature. Right? You can have things like wheat, for example, which is more complex in terms of its genetic information than a human being. That doesn't mean that it's somehow superior to a human being. Right? Other creatures are relatively, they have small genetic structures. Does that mean that they're any less worthy? So, I mean, the equivalence of the size of the DNA or the amount of information in the DNA and how that's expressed inside the creatures, and the two don't really relate. So in terms of how creatures actually evolve, there are mutations happening all the time, changes in the DNA, and some of those DNA changes are advantageous to a creature, and then those things are the ones that are bred and continue down the line. There is no concept of programming where something is introduced into the creature which then is carried forward because of design.
Thank you.
John. I do congratulate my friend for sticking to what you can observe instead of speculating about what hasn't been observed, like the soil explanation. But in terms of the creature that we're talking about here, you will find the standard example that's used is things like nitrogenase in bacteria, evolving the ability to actually eat nylon products that didn't exist until post-World War II. Whereas what we found is it didn't gain any information, it just had a busted enzyme that can now fit bigger molecules in it instead of the smaller programmed ones that it used to have. So you do see things that you'd at first say it's new information, but in the end it usually turns out to be degraded information.
Okay. John, why do you stick to 10,000 years when there are galaxies hundreds of millions of light years away?
Okay, let me make one point. Most people want the Earth or the universe to be very old and assume that if it's old, that means it wasn't created. I have to stress, you could have 10 gazillion years and carbon and hydrogen nitrogen oxide would still never make DNA all by themselves. Time is the enemy of DNA production, it's not the friend. So it doesn't matter how old you make it, time is no use to the theory of evolution. Secondly, when you look at the galaxies that are around about us and you say the light started at the star and it's taken this long to travel that distance because we know the speed of light. I remember talking to the professor of physics from Manchester State University, not State University, Manchester University, and two things emerged from that. One is, she came up to me and she said, I just can't believe what you're saying. What about the Big Bang Theory? And I said, did you say the Big Bang Theory or did you say the Big Bang Fact? And I said to her, when the shocked look came on her face, I said, when you can tell me the Big Bang Fact, come back and we'll talk. And she said, but what about all the evidence? I said, well, let's talk about the evidence. Because what you'll find is the problem is not the evidence about the age of things, it's the interpretation of the evidence. So if you want to see alternatives for redshift and things like that, Google ARP. He's an atheist, he's an astronomer, and he does not believe redshift is due to the light coming from galaxies receding or anything like that. He says redshift is caused by light getting old, and it changes the whole picture of the universe. One shift in the paradigm. Interesting. Okay, so when you have a look at the Big Bang Theory and all of the evidence that light has taken billions of years, the other thing that came out of the University of Manchester, Google Professor Barrow, who's on record as saying what we really need if we want to get progress in physics is for someone to show that the speed of light has changed. Because all of these things assume whatever the speed of light is now, it's always been the same. Change that one parameter and things change dramatically. Where did I get to with the professor of physics from that university? Very simply, I said, okay, here's the alternative. I'm a Christian, you're not. You're saying the light started at the star. I'll tell you what, we're not contradicting each other with the evidence because you have no idea if that's true or not. If it left there 4.7 billion years ago, you don't know whether it left there or not. That's your guess. Here's what the Bible says. God said, let there be light, and there was no stars for 3 days after that. So the problem with the Big Bang Theory, the age of the universe, is the fact that if you start with the biblical record, you have a totally different way of seeing things than you do with the so-called evidential way, which isn't evidential at all, it's a different religion.
A few shots in that one. Okay, can I just remind you to keep the answers reasonably succinct so we get through as many as possible. Okay. Peter, I've heard that DNA in humans is losing information from generation to generation, up to 100 faults passed on to the next. It seems to me this is devolution, which is a total contrast to evolution. Any change is a fault, not something to gain for the human body. And what are your thoughts concerning this comment?
Mutation happens all the time. Mutation is actually the driver of evolution. Without some kind of process which introduces mutation, now usually it's sexual reproduction, right? So that we no longer depend on random mutations in the genome because our genomic processes are quite reliable, astonishingly reliable actually. So we need sexual reproduction to be able to bring in the diversity of creatures. But yes, there is mutation, but because we have a process, the people who have fatal mutations, they die and they don't pass on their genome. And because of that, we have natural selection. The ones that die, the ones that have fatal defects in their genome, they die. And of course, you can immediately think of a disease where people die because of some kind of genetic defect. Okay? Happens all the time. Happens in all the creatures. Not a big deal. The process of evolution makes sure that those ones that do have those defects don't stay around anymore. Thanks.
When I was a student trying to struggle with this issue, I decided to take 3 years of genetics because I discovered us geologists were undertakers. We only dug up dead things. And I made an interesting discovery. The professor of genetics did not believe in evolution because of any mechanism he'd see. Mutation, natural selection, he knew that didn't produce evolution. He thought the geologists proved it. And he was convinced by a fossil called Samuria and I had the delight of telling him, I'm sorry, that fossil had been kicked out in 1932, you just hadn't heard about it. But the professor of geology, he believed in evolution because he thought the organic chemists could really simulate life in a test tube. He was shocked out of his socks when he found they couldn't. They believed in evolution because of expertise in other fields that wasn't theirs, but in the case of genetics, mutation plus natural selection does not produce evolution. Devolution is a better word.
Okay, thank you. Peter, can you explain how the evolution principles which guide actual evolution came to evolve?
Interesting framing. There is no guiding of evolution. So evolution doesn't have us as the pinnacle, doesn't have any particular goal in mind at all, ever, right? The only thing that's going on is that the creatures that survive live to reproduce, and the ones that died don't. And that's the end of the story, right? It's really that simple. It's not complicated. There's no view of the future to it, right? So it means that, you might start off with very simple creatures. They may have evolutionary benefits. They may become more complicated or less complicated. Complexity isn't the goal of evolution, right? So the idea that, we're evolving towards some kind of nirvana isn't true. Creatures just survive or don't survive, and whether they're complex or not is actually irrelevant to evolution, because evolution really doesn't care. Thanks.
Okay.
As I said towards the third part of my talk, the choice is not evolution or intelligent design. The choice is no intelligence and no design versus intelligent design. Peter's quite accurate in what he said, but in reality it creates an interesting dilemma in education, because the psychologists who are atheist evolutionists are currently wanting to reprogram education to eliminate one characteristic of human beings. Everybody is born with a propensity to say, oh, isn't it nicely designed? It's an innate fact in the human psyche. We love design.
Okay. John, can you explain why we have teeth that are designed to eat meat if God created Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, where all they ate was fruit and vegetables?
Well, I don't think I've got teeth designed to eat meat. That's why we invented knives and forks. But my dog has got teeth designed to eat meat, despite the fact that as a master cross, who is brilliant for keeping out tax collectors and Jehovah's Witnesses, he actually loves mangoes. But he doesn't eat the fruit, he rips that off. What he does is he then uses his massive crunching jaws to tear that leathery seed apart and get that nutritious kernel inside. So here's the dilemma that most people miss. The shape of an animal's tooth, flat for chewing or sharp for tearing, don't tell you what it is. They only tell you how it is, what it is. So therefore, don't be surprised if you come with me on a field trip in Alaska and dig up dinosaurs. You'll carry double-barrel shotguns and Magnum 44s to avoid the big grizzly bears who are eating blueberries.
Peter, how do evolutionists believe the first proteins were formed?
This is going to be quite a long explanation. We don't know. Actually, I should say, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a scientist. I'm an enthusiastic amateur, to be blunt. My understanding is that proteins are part of the cellular process. Exactly how abiogenesis occurred is unknown, right? Science can't tell you that. And I don't know, maybe John considers that a victory, but I consider it a victory because it's okay to say, I don't know when you don't know. Okay? We don't. There are some theories, obviously. People have ideas about where these things may have started and how they may have started. But they're educated guesses. So I'm not going to come here and suggest that we have all of the answers, because it's not true. And when they're dealt without evidence, I'm not going to say it is. Thank you.
The word abiogenesis, just before John says this, but means the development of the first living cell. Evolution believes that all creatures on the earth, all biological forms, came from a first living cell, or a group of first living cells. So the question is, how do you get from non-living chemicals to that first living cell? And that's what he meant when he said abiogenesis.
Okay, briefly then, thank you, Peter, for that honesty. I would go one step further. Anybody who is willing to admit they don't know how life got here, they don't know how life began, is in no position to tell someone not to believe in creation. All right? You've got to realise there's a philosophical contradiction there. Secondly, when you look at the origin of life, proteins can't be it, because proteins are not self-replicating. Hence, you've got to pick RNA or DNA or something like that, and you always face the same problem. It comes from non-coding material. It doesn't matter how many billion years or chemical situations you give it, it will never produce a coded situation from non-coding materials.
You get that? Of course, the DNA reflection is got to have proteins. It's a chicken and egg, but I'm not allowed to be in this debate, so I'll just John, I'm interested to hear how you would respond to Peter's claim that there was no evidence for the Israelites in Egypt and for the exile. Did you talk about the exile? I did. Great. Sorry.
Okay, well, archaeologists scratch the surface and us geologists dig a lot deeper. So I'm not qualified in archaeology at all. I'm interested in it. I do a lot of work with Aboriginal stuff in Australia simply because it's there before I start digging for dinosaurs. So what you'll find is in this area here, I recommend you read a few other things or pick up, there's a brand new DVD out there by a guy who started out with the attitude there is no evidence for the exile, there is no evidence for the Exodus, or the Jews leaving Egypt, and he has become a Christian as a result of digging up the evidence for himself. So that's what I recommend you do, and I believe this has been done quite a few times by lawyers and Josh McDowell and a few others who started out with an absolutely sceptical position, so let's apply the rules of law. Let's check.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the question of evidence from Egypt, I was talking about accounts from the Egyptians themselves. I'm not necessarily talking about stuff buried in the sand. We're talking about the accounts that were stored on the Egyptian temples and so on. They gave very precise accounts of all kinds of wars and conflicts. They never talked about losing a massive army. It isn't necessarily the case that the winners write the history. They also wrote about their defeats. I'm sure that if there was a massive loss of an army, that probably would have been big news to them. Anyway.
Thank you. John, you've slipped God into evolution easily enough. However, why the Judeo-Christian God and not any number of other gods from other religions who have their own creation story and believe in it just as fervently as you do yours?
Okay, you will find that the God of the Bible, who is just the word God, which means the top of the ladder or the position at the top, is not a name, it's a position. By the time you get to Exodus 20, it's a name, Jehovah, the God, or Yahweh, the God. By the time you get to the New Testament, you discover this God is Yahweh, this God is Christ the Son, and this God is Spirit. Okay, and there's no doubt about it, from Genesis through to Revelation, the biblical record is emphatic that this God and this God alone created. So number one, there's a theological problem. If you're a Christian, you're not going to say, oh, Thor creates the thunder, when the Bible says, no way, there's no Thor, right? When you have a look at this, there's a theological problem to start if you are a Christian. Number two, when you have a look at the history of science, let's be brutally blunt. It is not the God of the Maoris or the Hawaiians who actually instigated any process that you think of as modern science. But I know it is the God of Genesis who prompted even Carl von Linné to come up with his classification system. Carl von Linné, go to his house, he's got a Christian fish out the doorway today. Have a look at the word in Genesis in the Bible that he used. At university in the 14, 15, 1600s, you studied Latin and Greek. In both the Latin and Greek editions of the Old Testament, Genesis 1:11, in English it reads, created after their own kind. in Hebrew and in Latin and in Greek, or in Latin and Greek rather, the word genus is used. So Linnaeus did not invent that word, he borrowed it straight out of the Bible. So Genesis is traditionally associated with science, whereas these other religions usually are not.
On a different angle, Peter, tell us about the NZARH. Do you have regular meetings? What sort of people turn up? Who special projects on?
We'd start. Okay, so we have a regular meeting every Wednesday. So we have
Association of Rationalists.
2 minutes. So we have a small place on Simon Street in the city. We meet here every Wednesday night to basically talk about things, all kinds of different issues. It could be religion, could be economics, could be education. So there's all kinds of different topics we talk about and argue about quite fervently. We love to argue because we believe in reason and argument to try and figure out what the truth is, as well as obviously reason. So that's really core to what our ethos is. As a result, we can be a bit of an argumentative bunch. One of the outreach things we've been doing over the last couple of years is the Secular Education Network. So the Secular Education Network has been basically trying to address the law in New Zealand that children can be included in a religious class without their parents' knowledge or permission. So, for example, you may not know this, but if the local school decided to open a, say, Islamic class after school, they could include your children without your permission, without your knowledge, and your children would be taught all about Islam. Now, maybe you're not particularly unhappy, maybe you are, but the point is that the parents don't get the choice. And that was one of the main primary issues we have with the New Zealand law and what our outreach is all about trying to change.
No. Okay. Alrighty. John, can you be more specific about Stephen J. Gould supporting creationism? He has written eloquently against it.
Okay. I liked Stephen Gould because he could distinguish between the evidence and the philosophy. Right? So when you look at Stephen Gould in his paper, Species Are Not Specious, right, you'll find that what you find is a man who realises that the real thing you're dealing with is the species that's alive now. Right? When you start extrapolating backwards, you're stepping into the field of philosophy. When you start saying because of similarities we can relate them, you're stepping into philosophy. There is no doubt about it, Stephen Gould's atheistic inclination was to be anti-Christian, and his books are ardently anti-creationist. But nevertheless, his warning stood in his article that he wrote about a quail that we've got to be careful that data from fossils and classification fits creationist tenets marvellously. Why did he say that? Genesis 1 says 10 times God created creatures after their kind. Implication, whales have never been related to dogs. People have never been related to apes or monkeys, so you'll end up with a classification system with distinct groups. That's where Linnaeus came from. That's what we've ended up with today. And then you realise one thing more. You will find that if you look at the classification system applied to fossils, and this is what really got to me, the separate groups work just as well on the fossils as they do in the present world, but the system was inherently creationist.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to that at all? All right. Now this one I'm going to speak to a little bit, not to argue either way, but to explain. Says, Peter, could you elaborate on redshift and its significance to the theory of evolution and remind me what it is? Let me explain, because Peter's not a scientist. Redshift is it's a little bit like what we call the Doppler effect. You know when you're by a railway line and a train comes past you and it's blowing its petard, it goes moo, and once it's gone past you, it goes moo. Well, it's compressing the sound waves as it comes towards you, because you've got to add the speed of the train towards you to it, and as it goes away, it's stretching them. And similarly, the stretched end of the light spectrum is the red end, the higher energy or compacted end of the light spectrum is the blue end, and so when scientists see stars in outer space that tend to be reddish, they assume that that means that the sun that's producing that light is moving very fast away. And so this is one of the reasons for believing in the Big Bang. The other was, as he mentioned, a microwave background radiation, which is assumed to be left over from the Big Bang. So now here, can you talk about its significance?
So the question was to evolution, of course, to biological evolution it has no relevance at all. In terms of the importance to the stellar side of things, redshift in terms of stars, so when stars emit light, they don't emit all frequencies of light. There are some bands which are absorbed by the star, and those bands are very precise based on the elements that are in the star. So what happens is by looking at these bands of dark in the spectrum of stars, you can tell what's in the star, because you can look at it and you can say, oh, there's some hydrogen, there's some helium, there's some a little bit of oxygen. But if you look at distant stars, you'll notice that and distant galaxies, you'll notice that those those bands shift into the red or into the blue, but usually into the red. And what Hubble did, he studied all of the galaxies, and he was able to determine, he first measured, he used various techniques to measure the distance to the galaxies, and then he measured their redshift. In other words, how far they were moving, as was described, how fast they're moving away from us. And what he discovered was the further a galaxy is away from us, the faster it's moving away from us. And if you time reverse that, the meaning is that everything was very, very dense and close together in the past, and it's been exploding away from each other. But it's not from a particular point. Space itself is expanding. And that's a very interesting, to me, mind-blowing idea. But the space itself that's expanding, it's not exploding away from a particular central point.
Do you believe the speed of light has always been constant?
I wasn't there.
All right, John. Okay, just a couple of things. The first comment, I've got to agree totally with Peter. It's absolutely irrelevant to the theory of evolution. The second point I want to make is the older you make the universe, the more problems you have with the theory of evolution, because time destroys. It does not accrete, it does not help life evolve at all. Watch what they're teaching the kids at school. We are causing extinction on a big scale. Extinction is all we've ever known. No new things are evolving as the ice melts in the north hemisphere to help the polar bears catch more seals or whatever. Evolution is not observed, no matter how long you get. I guess the last thing is a point brought to me by Professor Ed Nealon, and there's an article on our question site, creationresearch.net Q&A, and it's to deal with the expansion of the universe, but it creates this interesting dilemma. When you believe the universe has had a Big Bang, I think the current figure is 13.7 billion years ago, and therefore if you look at the distance, the maximum distance light should have travelled, it should be, 13.7 billion years the speed of light. Okay, now when you look at this is 27 billion years of time across, so 27 billion light years across, and yet the funny thing is the visually observable universe is twice that size. So when you sit down and think about it, if the visual universe is twice the size of the expected maximum given the speed of light, then either the speed of light has been faster in the past. If the speed of light has been faster, the theory of redshift is shot. If the theory of redshift is shot, the Big Bang is nonsense. Read up on Professor Art.
Okay, we've got 10 more minutes, so let's keep moving. If all creatures evolved, this is to you, Peter, if all creatures evolved, wouldn't there be half ape, half humans now? Or why are all the animals completely separate species now, not half fish, half mammals, etc.?
Short answer is that all animals have to survive. You can't have a half fish, half animal. You think that's going to survive? Of course it's not. What we see is common ancestors. You don't see half brother, half sister, right? But they have a common ancestor, their mum, right? You don't expect to see half man, half woman. No, of course not, because they have a parent. And the parents are the ones that contributed to the genetic information that came forward. And you can take that back as far as you want. We have a common ancestor between us and the chimps. It doesn't mean that the common ancestor was a chimp. It just means that there's a common ancestor between us and chimps. And similarly, there's a common ancestor between us and apes, and us and cats, and even dinosaurs, right? You just have to go back far enough to be able to analyse where the common ancestor is.
Thank you. John?
And again, the difference between what you observe and the story added with millions of years. I'd caution you about any story that you can't get back there and check. When you have a look at the claims about common ancestors with apes and chimps, here's your hidden philosophy. If it's similar, it must be related. The more similar it is, the more related it is. And I warn you, scientists have an assumption that needs to be challenged every time, and here's the assumption. If it's logical, it's true. Oh, if it's true, it would be logical, but Agatha Christie made a fortune out of selling 100% logical stories, none of which were true. So when you have a look about it, we should be going by similarities and differences, and if you do it that way, you find you have no common ancestors with apes, gorillas, or even dinosaurs.
John, what about radiometric dating, etc.?
Much nicer to date girls. Okay, I'll be honest, before I became a six-day creationist, I became a skeptic of radiometric dating because to get our degrees were still at that time tied to Oxford and Cambridge in England in geology, and we had to actually measure the age of a rock to get our qualifications. And the professor put us in a room, gave us a rock, each it had been broken out of one specimen, so it was all the same rock, and the funny thing was, we 10 students got 10 different answers. And I thought there's either 10 of us wrong or one of us right. Anyway, the prof comes in and we explained our problem because we had to prove it independently what answer we got, so it didn't matter if we correlated. And he then took our answers and correlated them on a nice graph, an isochron graph, and said, see that grouping there? Now here's what the average result is, that's how old the rock is. Now at that point, I'll be blunt. I thought if the treasurer of this country runs the accounting like that, we're in serious trouble. Right? In geology, we get away with murder. In chemistry, organic chemistry, we're allowed plus or minus 1% error. And I asked the prof why, and he said because anything more kills people. In geology, the accuracy of all this stuff is nonsense.
Okay. Sorry, Peter, do you want to respond to that at all? That radiometric dating?
No.
That's fine. John, there's another one on that one. Would the Earth, post the Big Bang, not provide the hypothetical computer with the missing necessary code parts? I'll read it again. Would the Earth, after the Big Bang, not provide the hypothetical computer with the necessary code parts?
Well, tonight is historical because I've never been asked that question before in my whole career. I'm not quite sure how to tie it all together, but my first answer, if I think I've understood the question, is absolutely not. Because computers, information does not self-generate, no matter you have a Big Bang or even if God just created the planet. There is no information in the dirt that will make life. I mean, the old theory of the Earth giving rise to life, which was a Christian theory, by the way, based on the concept that when God brought the plants out of the earth, it was because there was information in the dirt, right? That's where that comes from, but it turns out to be not true, and that's why Pasteur spent a lot of time showing that if it's dead, it's going to stay dead. If it's alive, it didn't come from being dead.
Would the Earth, after the Big Bang, not provide the hypothetical computer with the necessary code parts? I think that's more or less what you said.
I'm not sure I can answer the question exactly, but there's an interesting theory. Since we're talking about potential intelligent designers, I'm going to share one possibility for an intelligent designer, just for your entertainment. There's a possibility that the entire universe is actually one big computer simulation. We can't disprove that, we can't prove it. It's just an interesting hypothesis. So it could be true, although we don't have any evidence for it, and if there is some kind of intelligent simulator behind it, it doesn't appear to have any kind of interaction with us on a day-to-day basis. So that's an interesting idea, and as a computer programmer, I find it interesting. But of course, it's just a supposition. It's just an empty hypothesis. You can't prove or disprove it. But it is an interesting question when it comes to what we mean by reality. Because when we're making our own simulators, our own computer simulators, potentially we're going to end up with creatures inside these simulations which think and behave in their own environment, which will be inside the computer. And so it's an interesting possibility, and it's the only serious scientific argument I've ever seen for even the potential of this kind of designer. Thanks.
Okay. Right. Did you say that we know that things we know to be facts are theories? Did you make that comment? Right. On the basis of that, anyway, this is assuming you did say that. This question is there any difference between theory and fact scientifically? And if not, does that, in your view, make for the danger of any old theory being considered fact? And if there is a difference, what is it? Yeah.
Okay, facts come from the natural world. So you make observations and you see facts about it. So you look at a star, you can see the stars there. I can see lots of people in this room. These are facts. What do we mean by a fact? It's something that's independently verifiable by all kinds of people. In other words, it's something that we have a common shared experience of. So we kind of agree about what reality is and what these facts are. In the scientific principle, it means that they are documented realities. Like there is a microwave background radiation. That's a fact. Okay, you can measure it. You can go outside with your television and you can tune into it and you can actually measure it. That's a fact. Theories bring all of the facts together so they can be understood. Okay, so the theory of gravity is that if I drop something, it's going to fall, and it's going to tell you exactly how far it's going to fall and how fast, right, and how it accelerates. That's the theory of gravity, and it works very well. Not only does it work, it doesn't just work well. It's, they call it a law, basically, right? And that's the same kind of evidentiary principle that's behind evolutionary theory. So all the ideas of inheritance, reproduction, and natural selection leads naturally to the theory of evolution, which explains the diversity and the development of life. So it's a very good explanatory system. And unless there is contrary evidence, it's one that is useful for being able to predict what we see in the natural world.
Okay, John?
Okay, as has been stated at least once tonight, that science is basically an ever-changing explanation of reality, almost a self-correcting system. You get new evidence, you change your mind, etc. I do caution you about thinking that way for one simple reason. If you admit you didn't have it right the last time, what have you just done to your position now? You may not have it right now. So therefore, ultimately, your religious view is agnostic, because you never know when you've got all the evidence at all. Which brings us up to the question of facts. I go to India, I see men sitting on the ground in dust and ashes going, and they've got their eyes shut, and they believe that cow is their great-grandmother recycled 27 times. Now, those people will not go looking for facts. So facts itself is not a self-existent reality. Facts is related to your religious perception of the universe, and if you think about the modern scientific endeavour, and I've already mentioned it with Francis Bacon or Carl von Linné, your religion determines what you'll accept as evidence ultimately. Illustration, you'll see me. But that means you believe that what you see is actually there. And the reason you do that is that you have a belief about what reality is. And you believe that if you ask the question, is John Mackay there, that's a rational question, and there must be a rational answer. So you have a belief that there is reality, you have a belief that you're rational, and you have a belief that for every rational question there's a real and rational answer. until you take a course in psychology at university. And then you discover half the professors don't even know if they're there. Because they move to an agnostic religion, and your three premises which you need to have a Christian belief, a scientific belief in facts, are actually inherently Christian. So please don't think facts are self-dependent. Ultimately, they are held in the hand of the Creator God who makes them real, because He is the one who is the truth, not a set of facts.
Okay.
John has gone into it, I just want to finish with one last question, which isn't about anything sciencey. And this is for both of you. What typically motivates a rationalist humanist to get out of bed in the morning? What motivates you? What's the great dream or goal in life for a rationalist or humanist?
I had a bit of a crisis when I was about 13. The crisis was whether I should continue living. And I don't mean I was suicidal, I was just a Christian. Because if you're a rationalist, and I mean a really, really serious, hardcore rationalist, you have to examine everything in your life, including what's the point to being alive. And the answer for me personally was, I wanted it. In other words, I gave myself permission to have a subjective reason to be alive. And that's fine. We all like to be alive. That's fine. So in terms of what gets me out of bed in the morning, I made a decision about that age that my particular purpose in life is helping people. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? That's what it was. This isn't a rationalist point of view, right? This is not a rationalist idea. This is a humanist idea. The idea that we should help people. And that pretty much is the core of what I am. I help people because I want to. I don't need to give you any reason or any justification for it. If you want it, I will give it to you. But everything else built on top of that is built on reason. How I help people is based on my understanding of the natural world and evidence. Everything is based on evidence that I can get evidence for. But the things I don't have evidence for, I withhold belief. That's the way I think. That's the way I am. Thank you.
The same question to you, John, except what gets you as a Christian out of bed in the morning?
Okay, I became a Christian through reading a science book by an atheist. So I'm grateful to God, who's got a great sense of humour, and grateful to the atheists who were trying to prove to me there was no God and using the most ridiculous logic I'd ever come across in my life. Secondly, having become a Christian, the interesting thing as a science student is that verse in John 14 which says, if you love me and you obey my commandments, I will make myself known to you, present tense. He did, evidence. It was real. So I get out of bed every morning saying, thank you, Jesus, for a beautiful day, for an opportunity. Some days I have to get out and say, thank you, Lord, for a rotten day. Look at the weather. So it motivates me, A, to tell people about Christ, whether they're homosexuals and I have to tell them they're wrong, or whether they're atheists and they need a little bit of help to check out more evidence, or whether they're agnostics, or whether they're Christians who need encouragement because things have gone badly wrong for them too. So that's my motivation.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's our time's up, and I'd like you to show your appreciation for the. So, in a moment, there's some supper out there. Thank you to those who've organised that. And because of the numbers, you might have to wait a few minutes for a coffee, but that's fine. Please stay. I'm sure Peter's willing to discuss with anybody who'd like to. If he ends up trapped in here, if somebody could get him a cup of coffee, I'll tell you that will be appreciated. His colleague, who's the Vice President of the Association, is down here as well. I've forgotten your first name.
My name's Chris.
Chris. I'm sure Chris will be willing to chat to you as well. And from that perspective, and of course John will be happy to as well. If you want to purchase some books, there's a fellow called Arthur who is available to take your money and for that investment. And so that's the end of that, but I am just going to do a quick ad for the conference that's happening here. For those who are interested, this weekend there's a conference where John is the speaker. And it starts tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. And he's talking about Christ, Creator, Sustainer, Saviour, Lord and God. In the afternoon, from creation to the cross, and he's coming again. In the evening, from design to designer, followed by questions and answers. And Sunday morning here also at 10 a.m, made in his image, remade in his likeness. And Sunday evening, the session is on climate change, from Noah's flood to the final judgment. Okay? So that's for those who are interested. I don't think, is there a charge? Do you have to book in? Just come. In those times you'll be, I'm sure, given a welcome. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for being a wonderful audience and very self-controlled. I know some of you are probably bursting to say something or yell out something. I would have been. But you were really good. So have a great rest of the evening. Thank you for coming.